The Curmudgeon Rock Report. Curmudgeon rhymes with bludgeon. Rock gods do it right. So do rock nerds. We're here for the rock. 1965, 2021, doesn't matter. Crude, rude, yet somehow sophisticated. Welcome. Enjoy the show.
Arturo Andrade, how are you doing tonight here in the Curmudgeonly world?
Christopher O'Connor, I'm doing just fine.
What are we, Franz Ferdinand? I want to be with you, Michael. No.
Well,
Anyway.
I figure, since today's episode, we're delving into the chapter 2 of our epic dissection of the parallel careers of Prince and Michael Jackson. I kind of figure we might as well, since basically when we're going into the 80s, we're kind of really reflecting on our childhood.
Yeah, very much so, which we'll get into. This was a very personal exercise for me.
Hence the very childish beginning to this episode.
Yes. So we're slipping back into 8-year-old Chris and 8-year-old Arturo, which knowing how you folks, you think we're weird now.
You should have seen us in 1983.
Let us enter now the fabulous parallel universe. Longtime listeners, all 9 of you, know that this is something that we do every episode, and it really answers the question, what if we lived in a world where Arturo and I and the rest of you could program the radio, book the arenas, book the stadiums, be the tastemakers, and put the people that belong on the pedestal and make sure that they are on indeed that pedestal. So instead of the baby who is turning out to be the dick, I guess he's been making some really awful comments here lately.
What did he say lately? I like his first album.
Yeah, he's good, but I guess he's been making some homophobic comments or something like that. Now he's good. He's one. I think he's probably the second or third best rapper on the market right now. He's definitely the best guy from the South. But
now he's revealed himself to be a homophobic asshole.
Pretty much, yeah. I talking about something that I don't know the details on. That's why they call it banter. Anyway, so here we are in the parallel universe, and we're the tastemakers, and we're making the stars. And so, Arturo, who are you making a star out of this week?
Well, this guy, his name is John Murray. He's been around for quite a while, and it's his new album, came out this year, called The Stars Are God's Bullets. Now, back in 2012, this guy, John Murray, he is a Mississippi singer-songwriter now residing in Ireland. He put out an album called The Graceless Age back in 2012, which, in my opinion, is a folk and country rock masterpiece that really, in my opinion, serves as one of the most haunting, harrowing, achingly beautiful explorations of drug addiction and its consequences ever recorded. Imagine like Neil Young at his most singer-songwriterly, meaning more or less after the Gold Rush era Neil, mixed with later period Byrds at their most elegiac, but with a more modern Band of Horses style sound.
Yeah.
That's fair. It's pretty much what he sounds like. He's good though. He's a really good songwriter. Newly clean and sober, he released a badly produced, poorly mixed, underwritten hodgepodge of like subtle electronic experiments and romantic heartbreak called A Short History of Decay back in 2017. even though it had a couple of great songs in there, for the most part, it made one wonder if the guy should have just stuck to the drugs. Just kidding, John. We don't want you to die.
Yeah.
Um, However, Murray has bounced back in a really strong way with this brand new album, The Stars Are God's Bullets, in which he kind of goes back to his classic country folk rock sound, but this time with much heavier, grungier, dirty sounding guitars. Standout tracks, in my opinion, are the single Oscar Wilde Came Here to Make Fun of You. Hey, at least sobriety is giving the guy a sense of humor.
Yeah.
A wry, and the song is kind of funny. It's kind of it's a wry, darkly comic breakup song set to like this mid-tempo, sparsely funky country rock with ambient pedal steel guitar waffling in and out of the mix. The title track is really good too. Uncharacteristic for Murray, it has this really aggressive fuzz guitar skronk, and it's the closest thing the album comes to a radio-friendly single. At least a curmudgeonly parallel universe radio station single.
Yeah. Thank you for the clarification, sir.
Yeah. And the other really good song is the very, very 1990s alt rock sound-alike, I Refuse to Believe You Could Love Me. After the masterpiece that he put out almost a decade ago, it's nice to see John Murray bounce back with a strong album.
I refuse to believe you could love me. Still I choose to believe these seasons will pass. Refuse to believe you could love me like that. Why don't you believe you get to know me? What is there to glean from all these despicable acts? Would you want to know a lunatic like that? Trajectories collapse without her. Dead stars fall down, you fall under their spell. Then one night when you're sleeping, I'll find you.
My pick for this week's parallel universe is kind of a, I guess you could argue, kind of straddles the parallel universe and the actual universe at this point.
Yeah.
It's kind of like the you never watched the show Fringe, but it reminds me of kind of how characters can live in both universes back and forth at the same time, and meanwhile the parallel universe is decaying, and so it makes it kind of tragic. But anyway, talking about Lucy Dacus, fabulous young singer-songwriter. She is from Virginia, specifically Richmond, Virginia. And she has gained a really strong reputation in indie scenes as a lyricist, singer-songwriter, and not quite a punk chick, but a rock chick. You know, she's got this independent streak to her.
Although she should kind of abandon the rock a bit with this new album.
Yes, and that's where I was going. So her first couple records, including the debut No Burden, were pretty crunchy, but still had, she had obvious pop hook writing gifts and lyrical gifts. I mean, really strong lyrical gifts. So there's a connection here between her debut No Burden and this album, which I think was probably going to be the best album I hear this year. And I know I've probably said that 2 or 3 times on this cast, but I mean it this time. Home Video. So when she did No Burden, she led that album off with a song called I Don't Want to Be Funny Anymore, which really great song, really crunchy song, kind of guitar rock power poppy thing. But she starts it off with the lyric, I don't want to be funny anymore. Yeah, I'll be the gossip. Hear it through the grapevine. Pass it on. She's done with the old times. That funny girl doesn't want to smile for a while. Yeah, and it's this kind of defiant persona that she introduces. Well, I think this record, Home Video, really kind of answers, well, what is that girl's origin story? That sounds like kind of a hurt young girl. And so this record, it's semi-biographical and I think it's not a stretch to say it's sort of semi-Bruce Springsteen, that
Yeah.
it reminds me of a Springsteen line from his Broadway show. It's like, I was never a factory worker. I just had fucking talent. Uh,
Yeah.
and so maybe she's got that going on. And so this is kind of, it's a record. It's called Home Video, I think for a reason. It's really a concept record about formative years, about friendships, about learning, about how, learning hard lessons, grieving for friends, empathizing with friends, looking at love's lost, and then love's gained and love's lost, and all of these things, and just really kind of hooks into her childhood and this idea of being a upper middle class kid from Richmond or suburban Virginia, which basically is the beginning of the Bible Belt. Growing up in a Christian household and those things, and so you get a lot of really touching, really vivid lyrics on here. And so you combine that with an echoey sort of mid-tempo pop beat, which these days is kind of standard issue for these singer-songwriter chicks in the mainstream. But here really works. It almost has a hypnotic effect, and what it does is it almost has this. It's almost like a perfect middle spot for you to actually listen to the lyrics. It almost like forces you to listen. And so this record starts with probably the most up-tempo, blatantly commercial thing. And wouldn't you know it, it's the first single called Hot and Heavy. And starts with this wonderful line that pretty much sets up the entire record, where it says, and Dacus sings, being back here makes me hot in the face, hot blood in my pulsing veins, heavy memories weighing on my brain. Hot and heavy in the basement of your parents' place. You used to be so sweet. Now you're a firecracker on a crowded street. Couldn't look away even if I wanted. Try to walk away, but I come back to the start. See where the Springsteen comparison starts to come in.
Yeah.
And so basically that album, that verse is a preamble to the rest of the record.
Yeah.
Where
I mean, this album really, you said it's a concept record. I wouldn't say concept because it's not much of a story. It's more of a thematic record.
Yeah.
And thematic in this, it's just every song, the whole album is just a reflection of her youth.
Yes.
And her history of friendships and romantic relationships and how it's shaped her to this day. It's basically
but even some of it is a little bit contemporary. Like I said, there's a couple of songs that are like, sort of looking back and where we are now, where we were then. And so I think you had it right. It's more of an anthology, look at it as more of sort of an anthology of poetry or a series of little essays. But what it does is it forms this whole, this really kind of moving whole, and she really goes into some interesting spots. She's got songs in there, basically empathizing with a friend who's got a control issue or is under the thumb of a mostly absent but still domineering dad that she's trying to please no matter what.
Right.
So that's one persona. She's obviously got some old boyfriends in there.
Yeah.
And then she's got this, what I think is the best lyric on the album is it's a song towards the end called Please Stay, which is a really great relationship song. And this idea of, I don't like your habits. I want to control you, but please stay. I mean, it's basically it's a really interesting song about codependence. I'm not going to call it great, but it's a really moving lyric about codependence, and which is interesting because I'm 4 months into a marriage, and so I kind of relate to this. This idea of you drive me nuts, you leave your shit on the floor, which actually paraphrases a lyric from this. But and that you quit your job, change your name, change your mind, go back to school, go back to sleep, blah blah blah. But hey, please stay.
Back in the cabin, snorting nutmeg in your bunk bed, you were waiting for a revelation of your own.
Well, like I said earlier, today we're doing the riveting second installment of our epic series chronicling the eerily parallel careers of the two titans of 1980s pop, the two male titans at least.
Titans.
Right. In the previous chapter 1, we covered the beginnings of Prince and Michael Jackson's solo careers up to their respective breakthrough albums. For Michael, it was Off the Wall in 1979, and for Prince, Dirty Mind in 1980. So for this episode, we will cover their ascendancy to pop stardom and overall pop culture immortality, spanning the years 1982 to 1986. As well as the aftermath and the physical and psychological toll such stardom took, especially on Michael Jackson. Michael released Thriller in 1982. As anyone who knows anything about music knows, it's the biggest selling album of all time. It made him the biggest pop star of all time. Prince released 1999 and 1982, which did for him what Off the Wall did for Michael. Blowing up big in the mainstream pop world. Prince followed that up with the blockbuster album Purple Rain in 1984, which put him in the Michael Jackson sphere of super duper stardom. Plus, there were not one, but two major motion pictures featuring his Purple Highness. Purple Rain, of course, the Purple Rain movie, and the self-directed Under the Cherry Moon. Plus, he had more number one hits with the albums Around the World in a Day in 1985 and Parade in 1986. Whereas with Michael, he blew up with Thriller, and the aftermath of Thriller, as you, Chris, are going to go into detail, you could pretty much say is the beginning of the end for him.
Yeah.
Whereas for Prince, this is the period where Prince takes over James Brown's crown as the hardest working man in show business.
Yeah, I guess it's a little bit of an overstatement to say that it was beginning of the end for Michael, because he probably, as a performer, he might have made more money on the Bad tour. I mean, we'll talk about that in the next episode, but he might have made more. Like, he toured forever on Bad, and that was a worldwide tour. He probably made $1.5 gazillion on that tour. So it's not like it was the beginning of the end. But yeah, it was the beginning of the personal issues. But
definitely.
But yeah, things didn't really blow up until 1993 for an obvious and very well publicized reason. But yeah, no, this is, like I said, this is where Michael becomes the king of the universe, not just pop, but the actual king of the universe, and then has to deal with the fallout from that. And there were just a couple of things that happened during this period. Especially one big thing, which we'll get into it, but Don King might actually be the source of blame for the main pivot point of Michael's adult life.
And the New England Patriots football team are involved somehow.
Yeah, I was going to say, basically without Michael and his brothers, Bob Kraft, you don't get the Bob Kraft and you don't get the Tom Brady and all that. So interesting aside. So like I said, Michael was weird in a lot of friggin' ways, and that's one of them. So yeah, this will be a good episode. Prince's stuff from this period is pretty special as well. And, it's not anything that we were going to get into in tremendous depth, but I think we should just talk about it just briefly before we dive in. There's a part of me that still kind of thinks, and, this is, I see the world, or I see America as like one big cracker fest. That if it wasn't for the Billie Jean and Little Red Corvette videos breaking through and getting on the air, we may still not have any black artists on MTV. I mean, I think it was a combination of, no joke, I think it was leadership in CBS Viacom, whichever one of those actually owned MTV at the time. And believe it or not, David Bowie, I don't know if you remember this, but David Bowie did an interview with Mark Goodman on MTV in 1984. I think it was after those two were out, but basically he was just calling them out and playing like not only white artists, but basically like the same 8 white artists. It was like him, Pat Benatar, Rod Stewart.
Rod Stewart.
Yeah, yeah, and like Ultravox of all. I
Yeah.
never understood that one, but yeah, it was Duran Duran.
Yeah.
So anyway, without those guys, black, they're the ones that kind of paved the way for black music, and then the other thing too is that it's behold the awesome power in the pop world of the drum machine, which will be an interesting discussion way later in this episode. So
Yeah.
wink, wink, hint, hint.
The 1990s were the fourth golden age of rock. I'm stealing that term from Arturo because I wholeheartedly agree. It's a perfect way to describe the era. Why do we make that argument? Find out soon. The Curmudgeon Rock Report will be basing an entire series of episodes on the topic. From Lollapalooza, the good kind of shoegazing, and grunge, all the way through to EDM, mook rock, and Napster, we'll cover the spectrum of a beautiful, incredible span of time where everything changed. At first for the better, and ultimately perhaps for the much worse. What defined the 1990s for you?
Let us know at curmudgeonrock@gmail.com.
All right. So, Chris, let's start tracking Michael Jackson circa 1982 to 86. And I can honestly tell you the personal life information and the personal story for Michael during this period is probably more interesting than the music.
Yeah, well, yes and no, because you're talking about one of the most extraordinary albums ever made,
Sure.
and so it really starts with the music, and it's very personal to me. Really, without Thriller, you don't get Chris O'Connor as you know him. No pedophile jokes, please don't. Yeah. Anyway,
I was about to pop one there.
Please do not. But seriously, all those things aside, without Thriller, you really don't get Chris O'Connor as you know him. I love this album about as more than about any album that's ever been out there. I've probably played it as many times as any other record in my life, as far as I can tell. Maybe only a couple of Beatles albums count. Maybe like U2's Achtung Baby. As an adult, there's been a lot of Al Green's Call Me and Built to Spills, Keep It Like a Secret, but nothing is like Thriller. I mean, look, it's not only in the rarefied air, it is the rarefied air for me, and maybe for pop too. And the only thing that I can say personally for that is Mama Say, Mama Sa, Mama Su, Mama Kusa, the want to be starting something thing. So I swear, every time I hear that, I feel it right in my nuts. It's just a wonderful, weird ass pop song. So, at the end, it's interesting because you think about it, and we alluded to this in chapter 1. Now, this is a guy who, with Off the Wall, sold a ton of records. He won several Grammys. He got absolutely gushing critical praise. I mean, Stephen Holden from Rolling Stone gave this really kind of classic, here's how you do actual music criticism review in Rolling Stone. But all of that was not good enough for Michael.
Yeah, he thought Off the Wall underperformed, actually.
Yeah, and so this is an actual quote that that is attributed to a biography that was done on him in 1984, I believe, is part scholarly and part sort of unauthorized. But so Michael at one point said, and this was after he doesn't feel like he's getting the proper airplay. He's not getting on the cover of Rolling Stone. He's not blowing up the way that he thought that he should have blown up after an album like that. And he says, quote, I've been told over and over again that black people on the cover of magazines doesn't sell copies. Just wait. Someday those magazines are going to be begging me for an interview. Maybe I'll give them one and maybe I won't. And so, I mean, it just underscores the fact that, Michael might have had this gentle, kind of goofy persona, but that guy was that guy was a nasty motherfucker.
He was cutthroat, and very ambitious.
Yeah, very ambitious, very cutthroat, ridiculously hardworking. If anybody has seen that documentary from 2009 after he died, this is it. that it's he was just relentless, and he just was a perfectionist, and he just had it. So anyway, so he's wanting to like basically make a record, and he said it of just all hits. Just wants to do nothing. Just all 9 songs are supposed to be huge hits, and he's doing that deliberately. And so goes back in the studio with Quincy Jones, and at this point, I mean, there's stories of like Michael hanging out with his pet snake in the studio, and there's all this tension between them, and there's eccentricity going on, and I guess this is a real argument that Quincy Jones wanted to shorten the intro to Billie Jean, which I'm glad Michael won that argument, because I can't even imagine. I mean, the best part of that song is that bass, drum bass intro. I mean, which Michael wrote. People have to remember Michael wasn't just a singer and dancer. That guy could write as well. He wasn't prolific, but when he wrote, boy, did he write. So they go into there. So you figure you kind of take off where you leave, where Off the Wall takes off. It doesn't have that beautiful electric bottom that Off the Wall has, but it's definitely more technified, and it's definitely a more driving, more energetic, sort of deliberately. I think they wanted that rock edge, because again, they were swinging for the fences, and so they're working with the guys from Toto, and they
brought in Eddie Van Halen.
Yeah, they literally brought in, like, Eddie Van Halen came in for like 20 minutes, or like they snuck him in. Had him do his thing, and then he just like 2 takes, 3 takes or something, then he leaves. So it's almost like he's swooping in, swooping out. And so, and to Michael's credit, they make this great record, and again, it becomes about as perfect as it gets. And he pretty much, and we'll talk about this here in a little bit, but he wanted to make an album that was nothing but hits. He had 9 songs, which he wrote 4 of, the best 4, and 7 of them were top 10 hits. Over the course of a year and a half. That album comes out in November '82, and it's still, I think, like the best or the top album in like summer of 1984 or right around that time. That's when Purple Rain hits, and so that, and a couple other things. But I said longest reign I can remember. So there you go with that. So I guess from there, he releases this album. Correct?
Didn't really tour for it.
No, he didn't tour for it initially. I mean, he did some shows in '83, but he really didn't tour for it. So it comes out late November of 1982. First single was "The Girl Is Mine," which still went to number 2, but that means it got off to a slow start.
Yeah.
And then he does Motown 25, I think, in the spring there. Debuts the the glittery glove and the hat and the moonwalk and all that. Instantly becomes huge as an icon. There's the Billie Jean video, which you talked about, and I don't need to go into detail with it. I always thought it was the coolest thing in the world when I was a little kid. Like he's making steps and the sidewalk is lighting up, man. Yeah.
The most electrifying man in music.
Yeah, exactly. If you know what Michael's cooking. It's and I still have that, the glittering black jacket with the white ruffle, or the pink ruffles. It was pink ruffles. So a few things about this record. One thing I learned in the midst of researching this record, because anytime I think about Thriller, or I talk about Thriller, or I write about Thriller, I always have to go check the RIAA Platinum Record or sales countdown, or the chart. And for the longest time, it was this neck and neck race between Thriller and the Eagles' greatest hits. And which, to be fair, the Eagles, that's actually a really great record. I mean, it's the classic, like, roll up all the stuff that isn't unbearable, put it on one record, and it's awesome. Well, it used to be neck and neck, but now I don't know when they made the change. They now count streams. along with sales. And because of that, now it's like the list has gotten really, really strange. So now the Eagles are at 38 million. The 38 times platinum. Michael's only at 33 times platinum. So there's the separation. And
It's a good thing he's dead. He'd be pissed off to hear that.
Yeah, no shit. And then number 3 is Hotel California.
Oh my God, the Eagles.
Yeah.
The biggest band ever.
Yeah. And so, but the rest, here is where I'll tell my favorite story from when I was a kid. And this will give you an idea of just how ridiculously king of the universe. Basically, Michael was king of the ghetto at this point, and just he basically was he was deified. And so I'm in 4th grade, and we have a annual talent show thing. And at the end of this is like February or March of 1984. They say at the end, we have a very special guest here to perform for you. And it was a Michael Jackson impersonator who was he was a high school kid. He was going to high school like at Fowler, which is the high school across the way from where I was in Syracuse. And lo and behold, this kid comes out dressed in the Billie Jean outfit, starts doing the routine. All that place exploded. Like all those little kids, and especially all the little girls, are just losing their shit.
They believed it really was Michael Jackson.
They believed it was Michael. They start screaming, and you got like they're falling out in the aisles, and they're just doing the crying and the hands in the mouth type of thing. And so this kid gets done. He goes backstage, and there was a bum rush to the to the backstage door of all these like little these little black girls just going absolutely out of their friggin' minds. And to this day, I still think, man, that guy, that kid must have just been scared out of his mind. He gets off stage, and all of a sudden, there's going to be this rampage. And so I get this picture of him in that outfit, in the makeup, like just leaving out the back door and just running down Midland Avenue, like just running for 2 miles just to get away from this torrent of these little girls that were going to tear his clothes up. So anyway, so that just gives you an idea of just the how beholden we were to Michael back then. It was
and that's just insane pressure, right there. And I mean, that's pressure for a Michael Jackson impersonator. the real Michael Jackson had some serious fucking pressure. Especially from the record industry. He got pressure from the tabloid media. This is when like Michael's getting on, the National Enquirer for all his quirks and eccentricities.
Yeah, Bubbles the chimp and the oxygen chamber and all the famous stuff. So that all starts to hit. And so at this point, he's not really getting flack for it. It's more just sort of, isn't this funny or isn't this fascinating? And like what is this guy really human? And then, of course, there's he went to the Oscars one year. I think it was either the Oscars or the Grammys with Brooke Shields as a date. Yeah. And so there was all this speculation. And supposedly, I guess he dated Tatum O'Neal for a little while. And again, maybe this was all beard stuff,
Yeah, I think it's beard.
And again, like in doing my research for the last episode, there's speculation that Joe Jackson had him chemically castrated so he could keep his voice high.
Jesus.
I mean, and knowing how fucked up the stuff we know about the Jacksons that's public, that one wouldn't surprise me. But yeah, so you have this pressure and this stuff is coming out. And
speaking of family.
speaking of family, so not only do you have like the paparazzi and the National Enquirer, and he's basically at this point the New York tabloids are just obsessed with him and all of his moves and just some of the stuff that's going on and getting out there. And obviously, the glove and the jackets. This is where he starts wearing, like, his fashion gets truly ridiculous.
Yeah.
That The funny part about, just off the cuff is, everybody, most people listening to this podcast know the Thriller video without having to think too hard, where he wears that red leather outfit with, this sort of when he's doing the dance routine, and he's got that gorgeous red leather and black zipper thing going on.
Yeah.
That's how this guy was dressing. Like, he would leave his house. He was the glittery stuff, the leather stuff. I mean, the shades that you could see from outer space, because of the glare.
Dude, he went to visit Ronald Reagan in the White House in 1984 wearing all glitter.
Yep. Yeah. And the glove and all that. So the eccentricities start coming out, and, Michael is one of these cases, and, you've seen this, and, him and Elvis were kind of the same, that if you've got these really sensitive guys and eccentric talents that grew up not so great, maybe the last thing that you should give a mentally ill, really sensitive, eccentric genius artist is money.
Yeah.
Because money definitely put a change in Michael. But we really want to talk about this thing during this period, that you got the sense that they went from being a really unified family, the Jacksons I'm talking about now.
Yeah.
In the early 70s, and then as Michael started to get more of the press, maybe there was a growing resentment. Jermaine had a lot of success in the 70s and early 80s, but the rest of them fell off the map. And so basically starting from this period, for all of the family members except Janet, who obviously was very successful, Michael became the bank. And to a point where it got really twisted. And we're going to do it this way. So we're eventually going to talk, here in a few minutes, we're going to talk about the ill-fated, in the most hilarious way, the victory tour that Michael did with his brothers, all of them. It was the only time that all six of them performed together at the same time. But let me give you a precursor to this. So 2012 Vanity Fair article, which has an excerpt from the book, basically detailing the behavior of the family and the battles, where you had one side that was with the mom and the other side that was against the mom, and how they acted. Get a hold of this, and I want to read this whole thing because it's fascinating and it's jaw-dropping. So here we go. Ronald Williams of Talent Executive Services, a private security company that dispatched a team to Michael Jackson's rented chateau in Holmby Hills on the night of his death, tells Sullivan that hours after Jackson died, LaToya Jackson, his sister, and her boyfriend, Jeffrey Phillips, arrived at the house demanding to be admitted. "We're family and we should have access to the house," they reportedly said. Sullivan reports that mother Catherine Jackson also arrived that night and entered the house, where she telephoned Grace Rwamba, the recently terminated longtime nanny to Michael's children. According to Rwamba, Catherine said, "Grace, the children are crying. They're asking about you. They can't believe their father died. Grace, can you remember where Michael used to hide the cash in the house? I'm here.
Jeez.
Where can it be?" Rwamba described Michael's standard practice of hiding his cash in plastic garbage bags and under the carpets.
Oh my.
Talon described seeing LaToya and her boyfriend loading black plastic garbage bags into duffel bags and placing them in the garage. LaToya would insist that nearly all of Michael's money was gone by the time she arrived at the Holmby Hills house.
Jesus.
The next morning, Janet Jackson arrived with a moving van and demanded to be admitted. A few hours later, the truck exited through the front gate with Jeffrey Phillips at the wheel. Catherine Jackson and her daughters made it clear that they wouldn't be leaving anytime soon. They camped out for most of a week, Williams tells Sullivan, leaving and returning whenever they felt like it. So basically, these three ladies, they hijacked Michael's house and they stole his money.
Fucking jackals, man. There's a family of jackals.
I know. And this is like right after he died. So this just kind of
Yeah.
gives you an indication of how screwed up it all became. Now, that's the sisters. Now, let's go back to the brothers. And so this is 1984. And so they come up with this idea that this is the perfect opportunity to capitalize on the Jacksons brand.
Yeah.
And so they're going to come up. They record this album called
I.e. capitalize on Michael.
Yes. At this point, this basically might as well just be Michael and his sorry ass brothers on a American tour. It's supposed to be a world tour, and so the Victory tour. Now they had done this album called Victory to sort of promote this this tour. It's got songs from all six brothers. Needless to say, it's terrible with the exception of one of the Michael songs. Michael's State of Shock is actually a really great song. Strange but true. People remember this. He did this with Mick Jagger. He originally was recording it with Freddie Mercury of Queen.
Yeah, Michael was a huge Queen fan.
Oh yeah, I can imagine. And Freddie and Michael probably dug each other because of how theatrical they both were.
Yeah.
But something fell through, and then so Jagger swooped in and did it. So now they're going to start the Victory tour with no songs from Victory ever making the playlist. The
vast majority of the songs on the set list were Michael Jackson songs.
Yeah, it was basically Michael songs from Off the Wall and Thriller, plus like a medley of Jermaine Jackson songs for like 3 or 4. You got a medley. And then maybe they did a medley of the Jackson 5 shit because, people wanted to go see that. So this is going to be a big, huge stadium tour. They're going to play all the football stadiums and all the big stadiums. The bankrollers of this thing, they had original promoters, and that fell through, and there was a lot of consternation. So in comes the Sullivan family. Of Patriots ownership fame. These are the establishing owners of the Patriots, and the junior, the young Sullivan figures, okay, this is my opportunity to really establish myself as a concert promoter, and so he advances $37 million to the brothers.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
And so not only that, but I think he had to put out like a second mortgage on the stadium.
Good Lord.
It's all of this, and so you get that. So there's that. So you're basically Michael kind of tagging the sorry ass brothers along on this tour, and they're trying to do all this. Now, in the midst of this, the ultimate promoter of this tour, strange but true, is Don King.
What a country!
What a country! Or only in America.
Only in America.
We are talking about that Don King, the boxing Don King. And so he's out there promoting it like crazy. They have this bloated budget. My favorite thing is they actually had somebody called an ambiance director on payroll. And then at this point too, there's also, Michael is not particularly happy with his brothers anyway, because it's like, okay, so I have to do all this bullshit so I get money in your pockets. And so when he's on the road, he's like, they're like on the back of the bus and he's on the front of the bus hanging out with like Emmanuel Lewis, maybe a precursor to things to come.
Yeah.
So they go through all this and they made their money, but this is a tour that fizzled as it went along, that to the point where they were canceling shows. They weren't, they didn't sell any tickets. Like they had to cancel Toronto because literally they had 50,000 tickets that they weren't selling. The other problem with it is that it was probably a Don King thing. They were going to sell the tickets through lottery only. And so
that pissed off a lot of fans.
Got a letter from an 11-year-old girl saying, I can't go see Michael. It's because not only they were selling the tickets for $30, which at the time was, enormous, but you could only go through a lottery and you could only buy it in groups of 4. And so who do you think was buying the tickets? White people. Lots of white people.
Yeah.
And so Michael was so embarrassed, he gave all his money to UNICEF
and
a couple other charities. So now there's all this. And again, so they're not selling all of this. They're not selling out, and it's a disaster. Such a disaster that the Patriots went broke and had to sell the team to Victor Kiam in a couple years, which I think is funny. And then sort of the cherry on the sundae is Don King complaint, basically, accusing Michael because they wanted to do a European wing, and
Michael said no way. And
Michael was like, the hell with these guys, and I'm not doing this anymore. I mean, look, basically he put his foot down and said, I'm not going to be a meal ticket, which brought this extraordinary quote from Don King, which do you mind if I read this, Arturo?
Yeah, be careful, and I recommend don't say the N word, just say N word.
Okay. This is which, by the way, Don King, for being a black man who spent some time in prison for manslaughter, was really fond of the N word in very vulgar ways. I mean, it's not like the Tarantino thing where it was just sort of artistic. No, in Don King's way, it was like, did he really hate black people this much? So here's his quote where he's pissed off at Michael. He says, quote, "There's no way Michael should be as big as he is and treat his family the way he does. He feels his father done him wrong. His father may have done some wrong, but he also had to do a whole lot right. What's Michael got to realize is he's a cool guy. He's one of the megastars of the world, but he's still going to be a N megastar. He must accept that. Not only must he understand that, he's got to accept it and demonstrate that he wants to be a cool guy. Why? To show that an N can do it. So in other words, basically, you got to go out and put on a minstrelsy show for the white folk."
And Michael was so pissed off that he really came really close to suing Don King for slander.
He was going to hit him with a defamation suit, and his lawyer had to talk him out of it. So anyway, so there's this craziness is going on, and I guess in a way, it's definitely in terms of the family, and in terms of the pressure, and in terms of the alienation. This definitely did set up the rest of his life. So
like I said, I'll like I told you earlier, Chris. Like I'll always argue that musically Prince, his discography is superior, but when it comes to personal and family drama, no one beats Michael Jackson.
And look, that's the thing. I think that there's nobody beats Michael Jackson. And look, I think ultimately Prince has the funnier stories because he was so eccentric, or he at least was a very good put on artist. I mean, who knew what was really going on? Either he was that eccentric, he just liked to screw with people. Michael was just nuts and had a lot of nutsiness going around with him. And so, again, during this period, there's also the other destruction, which is more famous. It's during this period that he finds out that he has vitiligo.
Or is it vitiligo?
No, I've always heard it as vitiligo.
Vitiligo, okay.
Yes. And this is the skin condition that causes folks to lose pigment. And so you end up with blotchy skin, with some of it being dark black, some of it being white, some of it being pink, all of this. He starts to suffer from this. It's a real struggle. And so at first he's doing sort of extreme makeup jobs. And then at some point he is turned on to the idea that he should bleach his skin. And so this is where the unfair Michael would rather be white thing comes from. And so this starts.
But the thing is, he got really carried away with the skin treatments, though.
Oh, yeah, he did. I mean, well, like everything else, I mean, Michael was like the poster child for body dysmorphia. I mean, we really didn't have much awareness of that until Michael started to go overboard. Now, he said in an interview at some point, and I can't remember when, it might have been the 90s, that he had only had 2 nose jobs.
Bullshit.
Which on theory is plausible. It is possible that the nose job gets so screwed up that the cartilage eats itself. But no way. He had the chin implant, he had what was some of the other crazy stuff? He had the wig that was sewn into his hair, but there's a reason for
Yeah.
that. And then just all the other, like the nose, he basically, he was so bad that by the time he was dead, he had a prosthetic tip. You know, like he literally had a hole in his nose. So
Ugh.
so that's this thing. And then I didn't know this until I was researching this, that famously, this is when the Pepsi commercial thing happened.
Yeah.
So for the 4 or 5 of the people in America that don't know this story, so Michael was doing Pepsi ended up being the sponsor of that victory tour. So they're going to do 2 commercials. One of them calls for Michael to come through a pyro thing. It's like it's going to be this kind of sparkly entrance where he emerges from the fire or the sparkles onto the stage. Well, during one of the takes, he's about to go through it, and the flame catches his jerry curl, burns off the top of his head. You ever seen the video?
No.
Yeah, there's video. If you go look it up on YouTube, they've got the video of it where he's writhing in pain. He goes down. They fire extinguishes his head, and oh my goodness! I mean, it was just like Creature from the Black Lagoon, like just bubbly, pink, purple. I mean, it was bad. It was basically it might have been a 1st-degree burn.
Wow.
And so here is where most of his friends and associates think that his dependence on morphine starts. Essentially, pills, morphine, and Demerol, and eventually what became the fucked up stuff that killed him. That's where it, that's basically where it starts. What I didn't know was that they had, this came from the Victory Tour. They had another corporate sponsor. Can't remember off the top of my head which one it was. But Don King forced this idea that they would Pepsi would sponsor the tour. They ultimately would get less money, but as part of it, they were going to do these 2 commercials. And so you can basically say that Don King manipulating the Jacksons on that victory tour approximately caused Michael to be in the situation to have the top of his head burned off and his life ruined.
So basically, Don King is the one who put Michael in the Pepsi commercial.
Basically, yeah. It was Don King that kind of set that whole thing up. So go figure. One other thing to mention here too. I know we're kind of covering 82, 86. This is when Michael pulls one of the great business tricks or business feats of any artist in history.
Yeah.
And it does it in a very dubious way. So, he becomes friends with Paul McCartney during this period. They did Say, 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 and The Girl Is Mine and all this other stuff. And so he's getting financial advice from McCartney in a conversation and said, dude, you want to get rich, you go buy publishing rights. You invest in that, and it's through the publishing that you make your money. So lo and behold, Capitol or EMI or whoever it was put the Beatles publishing catalog up for sale or auction, and Michael swoops in and outbids McCartney for McCartney's Beatles publishing.
Yeah, McCartney was angry at him forever after that.
Yeah, it was. Yeah,
that was the end of their relationship.
And it should have been, because I need to find a number on it. But how much do you think that shit was worth when Michael died? That basically that was his only asset that wasn't debt. That basically that was the only thing that was propping him up, because at that point, everything else was screwed up. But so that's really the Michael story through this. And again, I have my personal connection, and it's very sad, but I'll still stick up for Michael, because again, the artiness, the artisticness, the originality, the
artistry,
the artisticness, artistry. Hey, Michael is so unusual; he gets artisticness.
On this episode, the Curmudgeons provided the second installment of our thrilling survey of the eerily parallel careers of Prince and Michael Jackson. For the next episode, join us as we bring you Chapter 3 of the Prince versus Michael Jackson saga. Michael tries to live up to the massive expectations heaped on him after the colossal success of Thriller and releases Bad. Does Bad measure up? Is it anywhere near as good? Plus, Michael starts to crack from excessive drug use and the intensity of tabloid media pressure. And he starts to get a little more publicly brazen with his, shall we say, fondness for children. Prince, on the other hand, continues to overwhelm people with his prolificacy. You have Sign of the Times, his most personal artistic statement and one of the greatest albums ever made, and the soundtrack to Batman, a multi-platinum blockbuster and his second biggest selling album. You also have Lovesexy and the not-so-blockbuster soundtrack to Graffiti Bridge. Through this all, the Curmudgeons will ponder if Prince actually surpassed Michael by the end of the 1980s. Email us at curmudgeonrock@gmail.com or hit us up on Twitter at curmudgeonpod.
Well, now, Michael, during this period that we've just described, obviously had a lot of drama and a lot of weirdness going on. So what did Prince have going on during this period?
A lot of work.
Yes.
Hardest working man in show business.
Yes, the hardest working man in show business. But, you know, it's not like he wasn't eccentric and weird as hell himself.
Yeah, I mean, but the thing is, Prince's eccentricity, there was a self-conscious, self-knowing eccentricity. Like there was a sense that he was putting you on with his eccentricity, you know. And he was eccentric, but he also, I mean, yeah, he was. Of course, he's an artist. Most artists are. But there was a big put on with Prince as well. You know, he knew what he was doing. You know, a lot of what he did was very planned out. Not just the music, but his presentation of himself. You know, and the frilly shirts, the pompadour hair, like, you know, Little Richard meets Jimi Hendrix basically was his look around this period. You know, anyway, but 1982 to 86 thus begins, I would say, the most fecund period of Prince's career, where he just did nonstop recording, nonstop releasing, nonstop touring. He was an absolute machine during this period. When he wasn't producing all-time, timelessly classic albums that defined a generation and beyond, he was playing sold-out shows all over the world. When he wasn't doing that, he was starring in Hollywood films. When he wasn't doing that, he was fending off and often picking from an infinite line of women who had made him one of pop music's greatest sex symbols. When he wasn't having sex with every woman imaginable, he was when he wasn't doing that, he was recording and releasing albums that weren't always up to par with his greatest work, but they always had at least 3 or 4 absolutely stunning songs.
Yeah, which pretty much kind of became an MO for him. I mean, he would hit it out of the park once in a while. You know, like pretty much, what would you say? Like every 4 years, it seemed.
Every 4 or 5 years, yeah. Oh my God, it's one of the best albums ever.
Yeah, but then in between, it would be like a couple of brilliant singles mixed in with like, man.
Yeah,
you know,
exactly.
So.
Now, this shit all starts with 1999. It was released in October 1982. This was a blockbuster album when it came out, producing 3 songs that made the top 20 of the Billboard pop chart, 2 of which hit top 10. The album itself peaked at number 9 on the Billboard album chart. I think the only reason it peaked at number 9 is because it was a double album.
Yeah.
Back then, it was a double. On CD, it was a single CD, but on vinyl, it was a double.
Yeah.
Right? Which made it a little pricier.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, beyond the commercial success, though, 1999 was really an artistic triumph and a big breakthrough for Prince. It was epic in length. It was ambitious in scope. It was sweeping in musical panorama. The minimalist electro funk of the previous groundbreaking albums, Dirty Mind and Controversy, that sound got beefed up for mainstream dance floors with full rock band arrangements and, of course, Prince's very own virtuoso guitar playing. The album is known for its dance funk workouts that push the 9-minute barrier. A lot of long songs on this album.
Yes.
But it's the pop songcraft that really pushed it over the edge to like all-time classic status. The insanely catchy and funky title track, 1999.
Oh, it's one of the greatest singles of all time.
Yeah, inexplicably made it only to number 12 on the pop charts.
Yeah, I don't get that.
Which is weird considering that this like has gone on to become one of his signature songs. You know, it became one of his signature songs. I think he played that song on every single show he ever did. Like,
I was going to say,
never a Prince song without a Prince concert without 1999.
Yeah, you got to give the people what they want. You know.
Yeah, you know, another one of his signature songs was the achingly beautiful and surprisingly tender Little Red Corvette.
Oh yeah,
which was his biggest hit to date, peaking at number 6 in the pop charts. And more importantly, this song was it peaked at number 6 in 1983. This was the big crossover dent into the pop and rock audience.
Yes,
Prince. You know, and it wasn't until doing research for this episode that I found out that Delirious, which is this orgasmic nugget of synth pop and one of my favorite songs on the album, was actually a huge hit, peaking at number 8 on the pop charts. I didn't know that until I did the research for this. You know, and I love Delirious, one of my favorite songs on the album.
Yeah, no, this well, that album's almost perfect. I mean, there's just like one great song and one great workout after another. So
yeah, it really is. And the test of time, the greatest test for any body of work when it comes to art, has been very, very kind to this album. Back in 2004, the Rolling Stone album guide said, quote, 1999 may be Prince's most influential album. Its synth and drum machine heavy arrangements codified the Minneapolis sound that loomed over mid-1980s R&B and pop, not to mention the next 2 decades worth of electro, house, and techno.
Yeah.
Unquote.
It's also worth mentioning that this is the debut of Wendy and Lisa, who it's interesting because, you know, Prince had that history afterwards of like the 2 hot dancers on either side of him and all that. But those girls were like actually talented and
keyboard guitar player.
They contributed to the arrangements on that. I mean, Wendy Malvoin is especially just prolific and has had a tremendous career. And coincidentally, worth mentioning because I'm envious as a man that they were a couple.
Yeah, the 2 of them. Yeah, they were a gay couple while they were in Prince's band.
And they were a couple for a long time, actually.
Yeah, totally.
But anyway, so that was kind of groundbreaking as well. But anyway, worth mentioning. This is the beginning of the literally Prince and the Revolution. So
yeah, totally. Chris, your favorite publication, Pitchfork.
Yeah. I'm
joking. We're not
Pitchfork. Yeah, Pitchfork. If you ever want to confirm that you actually are a good writer, go read Pitchfork, and
it'll make you feel good about your own writing.
Yeah, it's a wonderful ego boost, folks. Anyway,
after Prince died in 2016, Pitchfork wrote like a retrospective review of 1999, and it said, "quote By balancing synth funk explorations, taut pop construction, genre bending, and the proto-nuclear fallout of lust, 1999 still sounds like a landmark release in 2016." End quote. The article further praised Prince's singular vision and willingness to indulge his curiosities for creating an apocalypse-anticipating album that, perhaps paradoxically, was built to last for decades and even centuries to come.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, whatever.
Yeah.
Anyway, in 2020, Rolling Stone magazine ranked it number 130 on its list of the 500 greatest albums of all time. Now, this list wasn't compiled by the previous Rolling Stone 500 contributors, who were mostly old white male music journalists and
Yeah.
artists and record industry folks swooning for their beloved 1960s and 70s.
Yeah.
This most recent list had a healthy balance of men and women, a more eclectic variety of ethnic groups represented, and an inclusion of younger generation music industry insiders.
Yeah. Raekwon from Wu-Tang fame was one of the judges, one of the voters.
Awesome. Cool.
Yeah.
I like Raekwon. Lastly, for 1999, like I said, this album did for Prince what Off the Wall did for Michael Jackson. It blew him up huge for a mainstream pop crossover audience. It was another severe dent in MTV's color barrier, as we mentioned earlier, when it came to airplay for videos by black artists. And it set him up for a super duper pop culture explosion with the next album. Now, here's where I'm going to stick the needle on your side, Chris. What separates this from Off the Wall? The test of time has also, at least in this curmudgeon's opinion, revealed in 1999, I think, to be a more influential, more original, more innovative, funkier, sweatier, sexier, better composed and structured album, all making it, in my opinion, a much better album than its wacko jacko counterpart. Sorry to say.
Oh, them's fighting words.
Yes, they are.
Well,
I really think 1999 is a better album. I really do
well,
think so.
you know, in a way, it's kind of like comparing an apple to an orange, because Quincy and Michael were kind of making a statement of, you know, we're going to take the last 10 years of black music and we're going to make it into its own creation. So it's kind of like a Frankenstein monster record. And I think it's better. I think it's tighter. It's more tuneful across the board. Yeah, across the board. Yeah, is it funkier? No. I mean, yeah. I mean, obviously, there's a few workouts, like some of those 9-minute things, which are just, you know, sensational. This is also it's interesting because I would say that Michael's stuff is more influenced by the clubs and by sort of the poppy R&B going on. Yeah, I call it the greatest disco record ever made, but calling it disco is kind of an insult. It was its own kind of soul, and again, it was like a roll-up of 10 years of black soul and R&B music, just sort of forming this new pop thing, and nobody had ever sung like Michael before. And so Michael had 3 years on Prince. Now, Prince was a pretty amazing singer, too, and a pretty influential singer. Not as much as Michael.
But I would say he was a more influential musician.
Oh, yeah. I mean, no question. I mean, that's a fair statement. He wasn't a bigger star. He wasn't a more influential singer. And like I said, I don't think Prince is more prolific, but you know, I don't think that he's got a song as good as Working Day and Night. I don't think
Michael has got a song as good as When Doves Cry.
No,
I don't think Michael has a single song as good as that.
I would disagree. I think that, you know, Michael's got Working Day and Night. He's got Don't Stop Till You Get Enough. And he's got Billie Jean and Wanna Be Starting Something.
And Prince has got Purple Rain. He's got Let's Go Crazy. He's got Raspberry Beret. He's got Kiss. I mean,
yeah. I mean, look, the only song of the ones that you just named that I would say are arguably is better than any of those Michael songs is Kiss.
When Doves Cry. I don't think Michael's ever had a song with that depth.
Yeah, well, it depends. I mean, it depends on how you're defining the depth. I mean, Thriller is a pretty dark record because it's, you know, it's about paranoia, it's about competition, it's about, in some ways, it's, you know, combating violence and dark forces. You know, I mean, granted, it's weird, but, you know, Wanna Be Starting Something has that thing about you being a vegetable and they be eating you. You know, and stuff like that. But it's, I don't know. I mean, Michael, I think, was a little bit better than people gave him credit for on that. But yeah, look, When Doves Cry, I love it. I think it's a marvelous, marvelous, marvelous song. But it ain't Billie Jean, and it ain't Working Day and Night.
Lyrically, it's better than both of those songs.
Who cares?
Yeah.
Yeah. I
And
mean, it's
musically, it's a little more innovative, I think.
well. I mean, the thing that I think kind of blew away the critics at the time was that it had no bass. But who
Yeah.
cares? Literally has no bass.
Yeah, it
But
doesn't need a bass.
yeah, and look, Prince is. I will say this as a musician, absolute innovator of keyboards and keyboard use. Think about the stuff he did on Dirty Mind. Think about the keyboard riff on 1999. Think about the synth work and keyboard work on When Doves Cry. So yeah, I mean, he absolutely has that. But his Michael was king of the bass lines. Michael, throughout his entire career, extending into Bad and Dangerous, that guy could write badass fucking bass lines. Think about the bass line to, again, there's Working Day and Night, there's Don't Stop Till You Get Enough, there's Billie Jean, which has one of the great bass lines ever. And just across the board, I mean, it's just like really, he was a really solid funk. He had a funk thing going to him. Yeah, I mean, obviously Prince was the guitarist. I mean, so yeah, you compare him in terms of musicianship and all of that, and I'm picturing like you have like a left column, right hand kind of checkbox column.
Yeah.
And what can you say? Singer, Michael, guitarist, Prince, bass guy, Michael, keyboard.
Keyboards Prince, lyricist Prince.
Well, yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, again, Michael's lyrics were eccentric. I'll give him that. But yeah, Prince had some great songs, like some of his love songs. Like we'll get into it next episode. But some of the lyrical stuff on "Sign of the Times" is just astonishing.
Oh yeah. Sign of the Times may be his best album, like arguably his best album.
Yeah,
Maybe not objectively, but you can make an argument for it.
yeah. No, I would say that it's really between "Sign of the Times," "Purple Rain," and "Dirty Mind." I mean, those are the top three.
Let's stick to the 1982-86. Speaking
yes.
of Purple Rain, now I'll get to the album and the epical year of 1984, where Prince takes over the world, matches Michael Jackson for pop culture relevance, becomes a Hollywood star, and releases a work I think, and no one can argue, a work of enduring and unmatched brilliance.
Mm-hmm.
Purple Rain, released in '84, was and continues to be, for ensuing generations of musicians, artists, and super fans like myself, an inspirational, awe-inspiring magpie tour de force of funk, soul, R&B, rock, synth pop, electronica, soul balladry, and most important of all, pop songwriting genius.
Yeah, and it does it in 9 songs.
In 9 songs.
And that's the thing. Thriller and Purple Rain are both 9-song records. And so for them to accomplish as much as they did, it's pretty damn impressive.
Yeah, and like you said, accomplishment. Prince manages to accomplish the near impossible expansion of the already diverse stylings of 1999 by, with Purple Rain, crafting this kind of like a virtuosic explosion of eclecticism and inspired songcraft, while at the same time, like you just said, delivering it in a really rather short, concise, neatly packaged, cassette-ready album.
Yeah, mm-hmm.
But you can fit on a 45-minute side of a 90-minute cassette.
Yeah,
it was his first Billboard #1 album. It also went top 10 in at least 10 other countries. It produced 2 #1 songs in the pop chart. Why it didn't produce more, I don't know.
Yeah, seriously.
The dance rock masher, Let's Go Crazy, and as we spoke about, When Doves Cry, which is basically this anthemic synth pop orgy of songcraft, melody, and pop hooks that I think still ranks as one of Prince's signature songs and one of the greatest and most lyrically deep musical compositions of all time in any genre of music. That's saying a lot, but it's damn true. Inexplicably, the title track, Purple Rain, like one of the most heartbreaking breakup ballads ever recorded,
Yeah.
with like a Hendrix style lyrical, really lyrical guitar solo, went only as high as number 2 in
Yeah, I
the
know.
pop charts. Like,
Yeah.
what the hell kept Purple Rain, the song, from being number 1?
Yeah, I was going to say that's about as epic as it gets, and also worth noting that the basic track for that was recorded during a live performance in a
Yeah.
Minneapolis club in
Yeah.
1983. It was the first time they played it in
Yeah.
the show, and that's actually the basis for the basic track of that song.
Yeah, I know. It's incredible. In any case, Purple Rain just endures as the haha purple standard for R&B pop rock crossovers and anything resembling a pop cultural milestone, while at the same time being this major artistic statement of enduring and timeless quality, combining and expressing both the personal and the universal in a way that few have matched since. Remember that Rolling Stone list of the 500 greatest albums of all time that I mentioned earlier?
Yeah, Purple Rain's in like the top 50, isn't it?
In that same list, Thriller came in at number 12. Purple Rain, number 8. Enough said.
Yeah, well, I mean, come on. I mean, on a list of 500, I mean, come on, you're only talking like a couple of percent, like basically 1 percentage point away from each other.
Yeah.
But no, I personally think that's bullshit. Thriller ranked higher than Off the Wall, I believe, on that.
Yeah, Off the Wall was like in the 30s or 40s or something like that.
Which is nuts because that belongs in the top 5. That's one of the greatest albums ever made, and definitely belongs.
It is, but not top 5 greatest albums. Definitely not. I don't put Off the Wall that high.
Yeah, and then
anyway,
and then Sign of the Times belonged ahead of Purple Rain. So
anyway.
Well,
I mean, Purple Rain for pop cultural impact should be ranked higher. But yeah, I personally like Sign of the Times more, but I'll get to that next episode. However, Prince's domination didn't stop there, though. While Michael Jackson produced truly groundbreaking and culturally transformative videos for MTV off the heels of Thriller, Prince one-upped him in a sense by going straight to Hollywood.
Yes, he did.
Starring in a film very, very closely based on his life growing up in Minneapolis and in a broken home and trying to make it in the really competitive Minneapolis music scene. This movie, of course, was Purple Rain. It was filmed on a modest budget of $7 million. The movie grossed $70 million worldwide, qualifying it as a box office smash. However, the reviews were moderate at best. The acting primarily, and Prince's acting primarily, was harshly criticized, and its standing as a pop culture zeitgeist moment has kind of endured more than its standing as any kind of quality film.
Yeah.
My 40-something-year-old self gave this film a retrospective viewing not too long ago, and it really isn't that bad at all. First of all, no, Prince is not the best of actors, but he does have a unique sexually charged charisma that kind of makes it impossible to take your eyes off of him. And yes, I say this as a heterosexual male.
Yeah. Don't tell your wife.
Yeah. Second, it's clear that the director of this film, Albert Magnoli, was very much influenced by legendary British art film director Nicholas Roeg. There are lots of Roeg's patented manic cross-cutting of scenes with unseen characters, dialogue peppered on top, creating like both a disorienting feeling for the viewer as well as context for the promise of excitement to come. Of course, this was as far as Magnoli went in his art film ambitions, as this is, after all, the same guy who went on to direct Tango and Cash. So,
hey, leave Tango and Cash alone, man. That's a wonderful, terrible movie.
Well, anyway, Are we done yet with Prince? No, because just 2 weeks after the Purple Rain tour ended in the spring of 1985, and let me make a little segue, a little side point here. You've told me, Chris, many times that when you were 9 years old, your dad took you to see Prince at the Carrier Dome in Syracuse, New York.
Yes, that was my first. That was my first concert ever.
I can tell you that show took place on March 30th.
31st. March 30th. March 31st.
I know I think it's 30th because that show in its entirety is on YouTube.
Yeah, it doesn't surprise me.
You go on YouTube, you will find that show was filmed, professionally shot for a concert film.
Yeah.
And it went straight to video. But anyway, you can find that show on YouTube, the show you went to with your dad. It's there. So
yeah,
you might be looking it up now.
Yeah, I am as we speak. I am looking this up.
Just look up Prince, Syracuse, 1985. That's all you need to know.
Yeah, I remember being at that show, and it was awesome. Yes, it was. Yes, it was on March 30th. Yes.
Yep.
And
March 30th.
Yep. Okay.
Anyway, 2 weeks after Purple Rain, the tour ended, Prince released Around the World in a Day, which, for the most part, took his patented R&B, funk, rock, pop hybrid and infused it with a heavy dose of 1960s style psychedelia. Now, this album was clearly recorded during intermittent breaks throughout the Purple Rain tour, and I have to admit the album does suffer a bit from a lack of focus and a lack of great tracks. Nevertheless, this album is home to Raspberry Beret, one of the most indelibly infectious pop songs Prince has ever written.
Or anybody.
Anybody, complete with like stirring string arrangements that really kind of gloriously carry the song along. The song went as high as number 2, which is ridiculous, on the Billboard Pop Single. What the hell kept Raspberry Beret off of number 1?
Yeah. Oh,
and
yeah.
Prince keeps getting screwed. And the album itself peaked at number 2, meaning Prince was still riding the high on the momentum of Purple Rain. Other standout songs on that album are the really tense and bass and drums heavy funker Tambourine and the breezy mid-tempo dance floor filler Pop Life, which also hit the top 10 of the Billboard charts at number 7. No rest for the weary. In spring of 1986, Prince released yet another album called Parade, which essentially served as the soundtrack to another Hollywood film called Under the Cherry Moon, which Prince not only starred in, but also directed.
What a piece of dog shit.
Under the Cherry Moon. Oh, boy.
What a piece of dog shit. Yep.
This movie was both a box office flop and a flop among movie critics as well. It tied the record previously set by Howard the Duck by winning 5 Golden Raspberry Awards, including Worst Picture. For those who don't know, the Golden Raspberries are basically the reverse Academy Awards.
Yeah, pretty much.
The story behind this film is pretty interesting. It was originally set to be directed by Mary Lambert. She was or back then is, a veteran director of music videos by Madonna and Janet Jackson. There was a disagreement about the direction of the film. I'm not sure between who, but I can only guess it was between Lambert and Prince. And Lambert left the set. She was replaced by, drumroll, Prince himself.
There you go.
Who had no previous filmmaking experience. Yes, folks, this was a Warner Brothers film.
Yeah.
In addition, Susanna Melvoin, Prince's girlfriend at the time and the sister of his band's guitar player, like you mentioned, Chris, Wendy Melvoin, she was slated to play the female lead. It turned out she could not act at all. So she was jettisoned in favor of, at the time, the bright young British actress Kristen Scott Thomas.
Yeah, that just cracks me up.
Yes, the script is quite terrible with cheesy, cliche, unoriginal dialogue and a pretty lame, predictable plot. Two American gigolo cousins in Nice, France, try to make a living by scoring off of rich women. One of the cousins, the prince character, actually falls in love with a rich girl he sets as his mark, pisses off her rich daddy, tragedy ensues, and the power of love is unending, blah, blah, blah. Nevertheless, nevertheless, I will try my best to defend this movie.
Try. Yeah.
First, Prince's acting performance is actually better than in Purple Rain. It's more convincing. It's more natural. It's not as wooden and as stiff as he was in Purple Rain. Second, you get to see the wonderful actress Kristen Scott Thomas in all her youthful, beautiful splendor. Thirdly, and more importantly, the actual filmmaking isn't that bad considering that Prince was a novice at the time. It's well shot, it's well paced, it's decently edited, and the decision to make the movie black and white as opposed to like that color, that orgy of color that was Purple Rain, it was actually pretty bold and inspired, that decision. Although the movie is set in the 1980s, it, or Prince himself, is going for this 1920s, 1930s romantic film aesthetic with like a really, classic string-laden romantic movie score to match. However, unfortunately, this movie score is interspersed with synth pop funk songs off of Parade, which stick out like sore thumbs throughout the entire movie. But whatever. The movie is bad, but it is not Golden Raspberry bad.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, well, that's damning with faint praise. But obviously, the legacy of Under the Cherry Moon Parade is that at least "Kiss" comes out of it, which is my
yes.
That's my favorite Prince song, and I think his best. That song's incredible.
Definitely, yeah. I mean, as for the Parade album itself, I'll admit it's a bit heavy-handed with a few too many jazz soul ballad affectations. It is a love story soundtrack, after all.
Yeah, I know. What are you gonna do?
But like every Prince album, even the stinkers, there are moments of his genius that shine through. There's New Position, whose lyrical content being exactly what you would expect a Prince song to be about. New Position is kind of the staccato funk grinder. Girls and Boys is a slinky funk groover. Yes, more sex in the lyrics. But the showstopper, as you say, Chris, is the immortal classic Kiss. Easily, and I agree with you, undoubtedly one of Prince's 10 greatest songs and singles. If you sit down and listen to it with educated ears, it really is kind of a throwback to his earlier Dirty Mind sound.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
But way funkier and filthier with this downbeat, and it's infused with the impeccable songcraft and uncanny sense of melody that he had developed in the years since Dirty Mind.
I mean, the riff on Kiss is just ridiculously great. And then, but also there's a musicianship too. I mean, I think it's Wendy Melvoin's
Melvoin.
Melvoin. No, well, I thought it was Melvoin. It's her highlight as a member of his band. I mean, there's a little acoustic rhythm riff that goes on through that. That's just like one of the backbones of the song. But I mean, just the falsetto. I mean, the audacity of that song. I mean, it just has one of the great bridges of all time too. I mean,
sure.
The bridge on that song is ridiculous. And
Prince, and
it also birthed the greatest cover song ever recorded by Tom Jones.
In the 90s, he covered this.
I just want your ecstasy and your kiss.
Well, anyway, the good version, the Prince version, Prince was not screwed this time. This song went to #1 on the Billboard pop singles, and went top 10 pretty much everywhere else in the world. It was like a huge, huge hit. The album peaked at number 3 in the US album charts. It went platinum, but it sold over 2 million copies in Europe, making it the first Prince album to sell more overseas than in the US. And this is kind of the beginning of Prince being more popular in Europe than in America. Yeah. So by the end of 1986, Prince is riding high, and his Purple Majesty's Purple Rain continues. Watch out, Michael.
Now we come to the segment where we venture deep into our vaults, picking out an album of fondness for us, or filling an educational role. We pick an album that we really want you to love as much as we do. So on that note, Arturo, what are you taking out of the vault this week?
Yeah, like for this episode, we are doing Prince versus Michael, 1982 to 1986. So for our vault records, we're going to pick albums from this period of 1982 to 1986. And mine, the one that I chose for this episode, is Echo and the Bunnymen's Ocean Rain. Now, this is one of the most criminally underrated albums ever made by one of the most criminally underrated bands of all time, at least in the US. So let me give you a little brief history on Echo and the Bunnymen for those of you who probably don't know about them, especially if you're a younger listener. They emerged from Liverpool, England. Yes, they're the second most famous band to ever come out of Liverpool in 1980 with their debut album Crocodiles. And they were part of the burgeoning post-punk movement. They were initially lumped in with other bands such as Susie and the Banshees, The Cure, Bauhaus, and Wire. However, it became clear to anyone with good ears that Echo really were totally different from all those other bands. I mean, they were dark, but they weren't gloomy and gothy. They didn't have avant-garde pretensions. They had a unique original sound all their own that lead singer, guitarist Ian McCulloch, whose mouth has always been as big as his talent, claimed U2 completely stole from. Now, I personally don't buy that because Echo and the Bunnymen and U2 came out at exactly the same time. And The Edge had his patented guitar sound already developed by the time U2's first album, Boy, came out, which was in the same year as Echo's first album. Nevertheless, Echo and the Bunnymen, as far as I see it, they did for British rock what REM did for American rock a few years later. They created the demarcation point where post-punk morphed into alternative rock. To me, Echo and the Bunnymen were arguably the first British alternative rock band.
That's a fair statement.
Back when the Cure were still doing goth, Pete DeFreitas was an astounding drummer whose tightness and power never let the music dissolve into like ethereal shit mist, like a lot of post-punk bands did.
Shit mist is a pretty good. I like that. That's my new descriptor for that. Yeah.
Ethereal shit mist. Yeah,
there you go. I'm gonna start a cover band called that. But anyway, go ahead.
Ethereal shit mist. Yeah. Unlike a lot of post-punk bands, however, DeFreitas, his drumming actually sounded like drums. not like a pen tapping on your hand,
Yeah, pretty much.
Like I love Joy Division, but man, so many bands took the wrong lessons from Joy Division. Anyway, back to Echo. Admittedly, Will Sargent's guitar sound, which is very chiming, very staccato, was eerily similar to the Edge's, sure, but while the Edge's guitar sound had striking aggression that hits you over the top, Sargent's guitar sound had more of a slinky funk sound that kind of more seeped into your skin. Edge hit you over the head with it. Will Sargent kind of like did the subtle thing. And of course, there was singer Ian McCulloch.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't sound like a vampire, a la Bauhaus's Peter Murphy.
Yeah, he could actually sing. Yeah.
Yeah, he didn't have that weepy whine like The Cure's Robert Smith, and he didn't do that over-the-top Cockney bit like Wire's Colin Newman. What you got instead was this deeply powerful vocalist, like you said, Chris. He could actually sing, and he could vacillate between that mystic baritone of Jim Morrison and some truly inspired, high-pitched emoting that few singers of his era really could convincingly do.
Oh, yeah.
Lyrics were always kind of an interesting proposition for McCulloch. His lyrics could be overly obtuse and surreal for surrealism's sake, which is never good. But they could also be very funny with lots of witty wordplay. They could also be profoundly moving with these impressionistic image fragments and weird yet fascinating metaphysical musings that could resonate long after you finish hearing the song. The turning point for these guys came in 1983 with Porcupine, which expanded the band's sound with unusual sounding synthesizers and classical Spanish guitars and really like kind of not quite lush, but getting there string arrangements. Look no further than The Cutter, that incredible single from that album, which in my opinion packs more melodic invention and musical innovation in just under 4 minutes than most progressive rock bands could in entire albums.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
That's a great song. All of this, however, of course, set the stage for the immortal Ocean Rain. Released in May 1984, the string arrangements that subtly colored the music on Porcupine now grew to this 35-piece orchestra that embellished and gave life to the greatest, most beautiful songs the band had written to this point and would ever write. To call this a departure from the earlier Bunnymen sound is like saying the Beatles came a long way since Please Please Me. Like this is 1984, so this is like an era of glossy reverb drum heavy pop and plastic synth pop. In this era,
it's the year of Simple Minds.
Yeah, exactly. So in this kind of era, Ocean Rain had this epic grandeur that stuck out like an anorexic in a Weight Watchers convention. It really did, But more importantly, though, the classicist and symphonic pop of Ocean Rain sounded timeless then, and if anything, it's actually gotten better with age. Especially now in a time where a lot of pop music is just kind of inundated with synthetic, monotonous, sad sack electronic drivel. Songs like Silver, My Kingdom, and the title track, Ocean Rain, just sail to the fucking heavens. The Killing Moon, which is the most famous song on this album, is a top 10 hit in the UK and is one of the greatest rock singles of all time. And I will go to my grave with that.
No, I agree with that. I think the opening guitar notes are just absolutely iconic and have been appropriated in a lot of different spots and in a lot of different ways.
Totally.
If you know,
and I was
just going to say, if you know nothing about else about Echo and the Bunnymen, you've heard that little riff, that little Chinese sounding riff.
Yeah, totally. And I called this album criminally underrated, mainly from an American perspective. In the UK, it's properly revered by both critics and artists. And you can hear, no pun intended, echoes of this album's influence on bands such as The Verve, Radiohead, early Coldplay, i.e., back when Coldplay were good,
Yes.
and the Manchester band Money, who are really obscure, but they're really good.
Yeah.
1984 was a year of iconic pop and rock, as we all know. You know, you had Madonna, Bruce Springsteen, Prince, and yes, Phil Collins all dominated the pop landscape.
Yes.
If I were to do a retrospective top 10 albums list of 1984, this album would easily come in at number 2 behind only the almighty Prince. And if we're doing just rock albums, Ocean Rain's the number 1 rock album of 1984, period. You know, for me.
I jump and I change and the mystery thickens. There's blood on my hands and you want me to listen. To brawn and to brain when the truth's in the middle. Born of the green like all good riddles. Burn the skin off and climb the rooftop. I will be done. Bite the nose off and make it the most of kingdom.
Now, as a segue, you say that this band was criminally underrated, or is one of the most underrated bands of all time.
At least in the U.S.
Yeah. And I would say, whether it's the U.S. or the world, my band, and the one that I'm going to cover today, I also think might actually be the single most underrated rock band in American history. And talking about ZZ Top, inspired by a couple of things to cover Eliminator. Well, one, Dusty Hill, the other guy with the beard. You know, the less famous, less revered guy with the beard, who was the bassist, just died a few days ago. And so that kind of brought them back on the radar, and had the rock nerds like us reaching for old ZZ Top records. But also, I got to thinking that this would be an ideal album to revisit in the vault for this episode, because we're talking about the formation of MTV as we knew it, came to know it, and when we think of MTV back in the day, what we consider. And you cannot talk about that story without ZZ Top.
Yeah.
And so
those guys with the beards is basically what they were known as.
Now here's the thing. With rock and roll, it's a fascinating, obviously I love it. It's the love of my life, basically. But you can tell its story pretty much through an examination of its gimmicks. And Eliminator, well, one, ZZ Top anyway, but Eliminator is one of the great gimmick albums of all time. Or at least it's a really neat accomplishment.
You went from a gimmick-free band and Echo and the Bunnymen to a gimmick album?
Yeah, to a completely gimmick album. Now, ZZ Top, I mean, it's interesting. I live outside of Houston now. They're about, they're like basically the greatest, one of the great products, rock and roll products of Houston of all time. And for years, I mean, this was a band in the 70s that had some sort of marginal hits and had a following and were a big deal. The rhythms of Eliminator were not anything original. If you listen to stuff like I'm Bad, I'm Nationwide, or if you listen to Cheap Sunglasses, I think it's probably a good example. Or even like stuff like Tush, which, is Dusty Hill's greatest contribution to the band. Or even like Jesus Just Left Chicago. You listen to all that stuff, you hear this kind of original, kind of deep groove. And not only that, but also Billy Gibbons' ability as a guitarist. Well, with Eliminator, they obviously were swinging for the fences. They had discovered, or their engineer had discovered, drum machines and bass synth, or synth bass. And it was one of these things where it's like, hey, you guys, because they had come out with El Loco, which had some modest hits. And so they were like, guys, you want to get on MTV, you guys want to sell a bunch of records, you got to go with the drum machines and the synth bass. And so essentially what Eliminator is drum machines and synth bass ramped up to about 120 beats per minute with Billy Gibbons just jamming out. It's like I said, Dusty Hill just died and he barely plays on this record. And so what you get is you get this hybrid of these great beats with these great riffs and just absolute just jamming out. I mean, really just kind of almost like danceable blues rock and just iconic riffs. Sharp Dressed Man, we all know it. What awesome riff.
The wrestling fan in me knows it as the first time I ever heard it was watching NWA Worldwide Wrestling, and it was the entrance music for Gorgeous Jimmy Garvin.
Yep, and it was perfect for that guy's gimmick too, for sure. But then there's other stuff too. Give Me All Your Lovin', Legs. This is what I'm saying with MTV. So, trivia question for you, Arturo.
Yeah.
Do you know what make and model that car is? The famous red vintage car that showed up in all those videos with the Z's on the side.
I don't know anything about cars. Tell me.
Okay, it is a 1933 Ford Coupe that Billy Gibbons, who was a car guy, had rebuilt. And it was such a cool car. It's like, hey, why don't we put this on the album cover, put this in the videos? So there was that. And their shtick, one, Kevin Bacon stars in the Sharp Dressed Man video, so that's another trivia thing for you. But it's the Give Me All Your Lovin' video, and it's the Legs video that really kind of sold these guys. So you've got these two guys with like the 8-inch long beards and the shades and the hats with the guitars that have like fucking bunny rabbit fuzz on them or like dice or whatever the hell they had, swaying with the one guy in the band that didn't have a beard named Beard.
Frank Beard.
Yeah, poor guy, because he didn't play any drums on that album and he has to be in the videos pretending to play drums. Which is,
I mean, he played on tour.
Yeah, but he was a kick-ass drummer too. I mean, you hear some of those old, especially like Cheap Sunglasses and some of those like precursors to this on there. And so a bunch of brilliant stuff on there, Got Me Under Pressure. And like I said, Give Me All Your Lovin', Sharp Dressed Man, TV Dinners, which is the most underappreciated song on the record. I love it. And then you've got Legs. It is diamond certified. Has been there for a long time, and I like I said, now is just a good opportunity for our younger fans because ZZ Top kind of fell off, and they became a nostalgia band for guys our age and older, and so they still made a bunch of money on tour, but it wasn't like young people. And so I implore any of our younger listeners to go out and find ZZ Top's Eliminator. It is a fun ass listen. The other thing I'll mention too is it's interesting because the album before El Loco may be one of the most like purely sophomorically misogynistic records I've ever heard. I mean, look, it's got two songs. They're both great songs, by the way, but it's got one called The Tube Snake Boogie.
Yep. And
then another one called Pearl Necklace. And so for our younger viewers, go look up Pearl Necklace and what that entails. But they go from there and they graduate to light misogyny. They were looking to sell records. So, Got Me Under Pressure, and Legs. This is light misogyny, and so at least maybe they matured a little bit.
So we have gone on for a long time, Chris. We're going to end it, and we're going to tell our listeners that our next episode will be Prince versus Michael, Chapter 3. Yes.
Yes, the book continues. We segue into 1987 to 1990. The Curmudgeon Rock Report will keep on rocking.